It's 2 o'clock this afternoon. You open your brokerage app and buy 1,000 shares of a stock at $20 a share. $20,000. The app pings. Order filled. Here's a question. Has that $20,000 actually left your account? Do you actually own those 1,000 shares right now? Your instinct is probably, obviously, yes. The trade went through. But under the strict definition used in financial markets, no, neither of those things has happened yet. What you have is a promise that sometime soon the money will be debited and the shares will be transferred into your name. How soon is soon? Who carries it out? And what happens if something goes wrong in the middle? That's what this series is about. Welcome to the Digital Asset Policy Lab. Prices move every day. The rules are always there. Most financial content focuses on one thing: price, up or down, buy or sell, how to read a chart. But price is just the surface of financial markets. Underneath it, there's an entire system that determines how money and assets actually change hands. That system is called the Securities Settlement Infrastructure. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't show up in analyst reports. But it is the foundation everything else is built on. When the foundation holds, markets can rise and fall. That's just business. When the foundation cracks, everything built on top of it collapses instantly. This series is going to take that foundation apart, piece by piece. In this first episode, we're starting with the most basic question. What's the difference between a trade and a settlement? Let's establish the core distinction. In standard financial terminology, trading and settlement are two separate steps. A trade is the moment buyer and seller agree on a price and quantity. You tap buy. The system matches your order with a seller's order. That moment of matching, that's the trade. Settlement is everything that happens after. The seller actually delivers the securities. The buyer actually delivers the cash. Both parties fulfill their obligations. The transaction is legally complete. In theory, these two things could happen simultaneously. In practice, they almost never do. Why? Because a trade is just an information event. Matching two orders takes milliseconds. But settlement involves the actual movement of money and assets. It requires the banking system, the securities depository, account verification, balance checks, and ownership transfer. Even in the most advanced systems, that takes time. So the industry has a specific term for this gap: the settlement cycle. In China's A-share market, the settlement cycle is T+1. Trade on day T, cash and securities settle on T+1. U.S. equities moved to T+1 in 2024, previously T+2. Most European markets are still T+2. And here's what that means. Before T+1 arrives, that trade is not, in any strict sense, final. There's a standard way the industry describes how markets are structured: front office and back office. The front office is the trading layer: exchanges, pricing systems, brokers, the app on your phone. It's visible, fast, and real-time. Prices tick in front of your eyes. Fills come back in under a second. Everything you see in financial news lives in the front office. The back office is the settlement layer: central securities depositories, clearinghouses, payment systems, reconciliation engines. It's the opposite: invisible, batch-processed, and completed after the fact. This front/back distinction isn't just a metaphor. It's a formal industry classification. The Bank for International Settlements and IOSCO both use it. in their technical standards, and they regulate the two layers separately. Why? Because the risk profiles are completely different. Front office risk is primarily market risk. You bought at the wrong price. You made a bad call. That's your problem. It doesn't spread to anyone else. Back office risk is primarily counterparty risk. A trade was agreed to, but one side fails to deliver on time. And when that happens, it doesn't stay contained. It ripples through the entire settlement network, affecting every institution that has money or securities tied up with either party. This is why almost every major financial crisis in the textbooks follows the same pattern. It's never just a stock crashed. It's one party failed to deliver. And then the chain reaction started. Lehman Brothers in 2008 didn't die because its stock price fell. It died because after it collapsed, nobody knew who else might fail to settle. Everyone stopped transacting at the same time. Liquidity froze instantly. That's a back-office risk event, not a front-office one. At this point, you might be wondering, between market close on day T and market open on T+1, what is the back office actually doing during those hours? 2 words: multilateral netting. Let me walk through a concrete example. Say on any given day in stock market, 10 million trades occur. Those 10 million trades involve tens of thousands of accounts, thousands of stocks, and trillions of dollars. If you settled every single trade individually, A pays B $5,000, B pays C $8,000, C pays A $3,000, you'd need to execute 10 million separate cash transfers and 10 million separate securities transfers. That's not just inefficient. It means one stuck transaction can jam the entire chain. Netting does something much smarter. It takes every transaction involving account A, adds them all up, and calculates a single net position. What A is owed across everything, minus what A owes across everything. One number. Do that for every account in the market. Then only settle the net figures. According to BIS data, multilateral netting typically compresses actual settlement obligations to less than 5% of gross transaction value. $1 trillion in trading activity might require only tens of billions in actual cash movement. That compression ratio matters enormously. It determines how much real capital the market needs to function. Without netting, the settlement funds required to run the equity market on any given day could be 20 times larger. No financial system in the world could absorb that. So every night, between close and the next morning's open, the back office is taking those 10 million trades, running them through a complex set of algorithms, and compressing them down to a net figure for each account. Then it executes the actual transfers and has to finish before markets open the next day. This happens every single night. It never gets reported, and it cannot fail even once. Now that we understand what settlement is, I want to highlight 2 structural features of this system. These 2 features define all of its risk logic, and we'll come back to them throughout this series. Feature 1. It's a centralized system. In the stock market, all final registration, custody, clearing, and transfer of securities runs through a single institution. That institution is the master ledger for the entire market. The U.S. has the DTCC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. Europe has Euroclear and Clearstream. Hong Kong has HKSCC. Every major capital market in the world has one of these institutions sitting at the center. The entire modern financial system rests on a handful of these entities globally. If any one of them fails, the market behind it shuts down immediately. Feature 2. This system's efficiency is purchased with concentrated risk. Think about how netting works. It compresses trillions into billions, because one institution sits in the middle, transforming a web of bilateral obligations between thousands of parties into a set of bilateral obligations between each party and that one central institution. The efficiency gain is enormous, but the trade-off is this: all counterparty risk in the entire market gets concentrated at a single point. If that institution fails, it's not one firm going down. The entire market goes down simultaneously. This is why the BIS's 2012 Principles for Financial Market Infrastructures holds central clearing counterparties to a higher regulatory standard than commercial banks. A commercial bank can fail, and the system keeps running. A central clearing counterparty fails. The system goes into cardiac arrest. This efficiency versus risk trade-off is a theme we'll return to again and again. Keep it in mind. Before we wrap up, let's take a quick detour into crypto, because it's directly relevant here. The architecture that traditional finance spent decades building, this separation between trading and settlement. Bitcoin approached from a completely different direction. One of blockchain's core innovations is this: trade confirmation and settlement finality are bound together in the same event. Once a Bitcoin transaction is included in a block and receives sufficient confirmations, it's irreversible. It has simultaneously traded and settled. No T+1. No central clearinghouse. No back-office reconciliation engine. In traditional finance, this was considered basically impossible. The assumption has always been that a gap between trade and settlement is necessary. You need that time for clearing, netting, reconciliation, and risk controls. Bitcoin's answer was, what if we use cryptography and distributed consensus to make those steps unnecessary in the first place? That's not a minor technical tweak. That's a fundamental rewrite of the underlying logic of settlement. The cost is real, though. Blockchain gives up the efficiency that netting provides. Every on-chain transfer settles gross. Individually, in full, independently. That's why Bitcoin's throughput looks laughably small compared to Visa. It trades efficiency for trustlessness, and it does so by returning to the oldest, most cumbersome method: gross settlement, one transaction at a time. So this isn't a story about one replacing the other. It's two architectures solving the same fundamental problem: how do you safely transfer ownership? And choosing opposite paths. One chose centralized, highly efficient, risk concentrated. The other chose decentralized, less efficient, risk distributed. Which is better? There's no universal answer. But at least now you understand what's actually at stake when we talk about settlement. Let's recap what we covered today. First, we distinguished between trading and settlement. A trade is the moment price and quantity are agreed. Settlement is the process by which money and assets actually change hands. These are logically separate events, and in practice, there's a gap between them called the settlement cycle. Second, we defined front office and back office. The front office handles market risk. The back office handles counterparty risk. When the back office fails, it doesn't just cost money, it freezes the entire system. The Lehman collapse in 2008 is the textbook example. Third, we identified the two defining features of central settlement infrastructure. It achieves efficiency through multilateral netting, and it achieves that efficiency by concentrating all counterparty risk into a single institution. The entire modern capital market system rests on a small number of these institutions worldwide. These three concepts are the foundation for everything that follows. If you've got these down, we can work through anything that comes next. Today, we introduce the settlement black box. What it is, why it matters, and what its basic structure looks like. But what actually happens? Between the moment you click Buy and the moment settlement is complete? How many steps does that journey involve? And which step is most likely to break? Next episode, we open the black box completely. You'll see that a single trade passes through 4 distinct stages before it's truly done. Remove any one of them, and the chain breaks. Each stage has its own institutions, its own rules, and its own category of risk. And one of those 4 stages, in my view, is the single most ingenious and most dangerous invention in all of modern finance. We'll get into that next time. If you found this useful, hit like and subscribe. Prices move every day. The rules are always there.